We are live. You have found the Hitbox Podcast, and I have screwed up this intro. So I'm going to cut this, and we're just going to start over. Okay, so it is Saturday, August 15th. You have found the Hitbox Podcast. My name is Josh Hinkie, and I am joined by my good friend, Aaron Hiles. How are you doing today, Aaron?
Hey, I'm good, man. Good to be here.
Aaron is stepping in for Daniel Fox, who has currently been reassigned to Siberia, where he is hunting Siberian tigers. Is that a thing?
I'm sure.
Yeah, he's hunting Siberian
tigers.
White,
I guess.
Yeah, and he is infiltrating Siberia, and he'll be back next week or sometime soon, hopefully.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so send all your love to Daniel as he sits this one out. But get ready for the charm of Aaron. Aaron, tell people a little bit about yourself. You've been on the Hitbox before.
I have, yeah. I actually was on for the fantasy special a while back, which was super, super fun. I just now took over as the new co-host of the Dead Pixels podcast, which is kind of our sister show that Daniel and Nathan used to do, Nathan Ortega, who is now with Telltale Games, so I had to fill in for him. I also am a editor at Indie Haven, which is the site that you are the news editor for.
Yay!
Which is awesome. So that's me pretty much. I write for Indie Haven, and I do this.
Yeah, you like to write a lot of think piece features. I really enjoy your writing, and you tend to come at games from a very personal, explorative stance. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think you're an excellent news editor. I'm stunned at just how great our Steam roundups and Kickstarter roundups have been since you started working on them.
Aw, shucks. Go on. Tell me more about myself. All right. And
no, I'm good.
You're just talking about how you had moved to San Francisco and you are loving life there.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually just moved to Petaluma, which is a San Francisco suburb. It's about 45 minutes away, probably. It's kind of in wine country, so kind of totally beautiful out here.
And other fun fact about Erin Hiles is that she loves baseball.
I do, yeah.
So being from Texas, are you a Rangers fan, or do you align yourself with one particular team?
I grew up in Atlanta. And when I was in Atlanta, I am 29 years old. I was born in 1986. When I was in prime baseball viewing age, which I think is about 8 or 9, we were living in Atlanta during the Braves' worst to first season, which was a huge deal. And they had probably the best pitching staff of quite some time during that time period. You had Tom Glavine and Greg Maddux and John Smoltz, who were the shit. They were the best. So that was my initial real baseball experience. Was my father is a Detroit Tigers and Atlanta Braves fan, and then I grew up going to Braves games. So that was that was my team for quite a while. Even after we moved, I moved around a lot when I was a kid, so I never really got used to a place long enough to start adopting athletic teams. So by the time I wound up in Dallas, I'd kind of still had that attachment to the Braves, so I kept watching them for quite some time. I do like the Rangers. I liked them a lot in the last few years, and then the bottom kind of fell out here a couple of years ago, and I have taken a huge pass on the Rangers for personal, moral reasons. I find the way that they have conducted themselves from a personnel standpoint to be an affront. So...
No, that's good.
Right back to the Rangers. I like the Tigers a lot too. So
it's very difficult being. I am a Twins fan, a Vikings fan. I pretty much have Minnesota allegiances across the board.
I respect the Twins very much, man.
Yeah, and we all know about the bottom falling out. We grow great players, and then they go off somewhere else, and then we're kind of left with rebuilding the team again. But it does create this conundrum where, when you become a fan of a specific team, it's very difficult to remove yourself from situations where, if something happens, it's hard to be okay, I'm no longer a Twins fan. I'm going to shift my allegiances elsewhere.
Well, then you're fair weather.
Yeah, well, and that sport has come to be defined by a specific team. If I'm not a Twins fan, I don't really have a ton of love for baseball aside from Ken Burns' baseball documentary, which I will sing the praises to as long as
I will happily sit down and watch whenever. Yeah.
Yeah. It's 22 hours of amazing baseball history. It's so good. All right. We will talk about some video games.
I guess. I got all hung up on baseball.
I'm going to start off. I'm really excited to talk about this game, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, which has gotten a lot of buzz on the Twitters and internets about missing sprint button feature, which unfortunately has come to really dominate the narrative of this game. And I can only imagine the developers just hole up in a little corner of their lives, just being like, "Oh my God, we spent hours and hours making this game." Like,
it's so unfortunate when something like that dominates the conversation.
Exactly. And having played the game, I was fortunate enough, like I knew about this sprint button feature before I even started. So I come with that quote unquote bias. But even with that sprint button, and the sprint is in quotes here, it's like a light jog. You move in this game as you would move in real life. You know, it's fairly slow. You're not an Olympic sprinter. You're not going to zip around this place. But Everybody's Gone to the Rapture is a first-person exploratory game where you wander through this British countryside that has been devoid of human life. A cosmic phenomena has wiped out all the people, and you get these kind of ghostly streaks of light, which they're introduced in a really cool way, because whenever you meet one of them, there's just a name that comes up. And the first time, you don't even necessarily realize why you're getting this name, and you just see this streak of light, you know, jump in front of you, and the name Jeremy comes up. And after a while, you begin to go, okay, Jeremy is the one showing me around. This is Jeremy, and he is, you know, showing me his version of the events. And so you follow this streak of light, or you can explore on your own, and you watch these, you know, scenes play out between these, you know, silhouettes of golden light talking to each other, playing out scenes from the past. And so the game, of course, is about this rapture event and this thing that ends mankind, but it's actually mostly about these citizens in this British town and the way that they're interacting. And it has that small town thing where everyone knows everyone, and kind of everyone has a history, like a relationship history with everyone. And as you begin to pull back the layers of like how these people actually know each other and what they're actually doing together, that is the most fascinating part of this game. It's very interesting. The Rapture is very much a side note, and this game is actually about the people affected by the Rapture. I thought that was brilliant. Yeah, and so, you know, basically, aside from that, it's very slow moving. You're just walking around, taking in the sights. You can find like little radios where like you'll hit a button and you'll hear from the main protagonist as she kind of explains what's going on with her, and she's the one actually investigating the Rapture. And then you can also find ringing phones, and you'll hear about the way the government is responding to this incident that's happened. But yeah, like I think that in video games, we tend to want to rush through things. And even in the games that are the most exploratory, something like Skyrim or Gone Home, you still have this tendency to want to control the pace. You want to speed yourself through things. And I thought that whether you like it or not, and I understand why people wouldn't like a slow burn like this, I did like that it was a statement from the Chinese Room, the developers of the game, to be like...
It's very much... Statement is a good way of putting it. I think a lot of... I've read a lot of reviews and pieces about this, about... You know, we've gotten to the point in video game commentary to where a lot of the discussion is based around meta. Like, what is this a response to? What is this trying to say? Which is great. I mean, I think it's wonderful that we're talking less and less about about themes and more about message.
Yeah.
I think message is really important in art, of course, and we finally got to the point where we're talking about what's this game saying and how is it saying it, which I think is an interesting discussion. But I think I've seen a lot of people who are saying, okay, this is an obvious, like, calculated, we have something to say about pacing.
Totally. And I think that
I think is great. It actually stresses me out watching people play video games because everyone is in such a friggin' hurry.
Totally.
Of course, I also feel that way when driving, but that's a whole other thing. Why is everyone in... Dude, we can all get to one place alive. It's totally fine. But yeah, I feel that way. Like, I can't play multiplayer games. Especially one of my all-time favorite games is Borderlands. I love that series so much. But I really can only play with my husband, which is this great couch co-op experience. But whenever I jump online, it's just everyone will just like hit A through, you know, you miss all the story, you miss all this voice acting. Like everyone's just like, okay, we'll just get the fetch quest, let's get over with. Like, I don't understand why are we in such a friggin' hurry. Like, and in games like, of course, Morrowind caught a lot of flack for this when it first came out. If you remember that, like, Walking Simulator, that was the first game that got called a walking simulator. And it was so slow, but Morrowind's absolutely beautiful, and there's so much stuff to stop and look at, and not everything has to be a fetch quest where you're just, like, looking down at the ground following glowing breadcrumbs, you know?
And that was actually one of the moments that really grabbed me with Rapture. I was walking around, and I had, for the first time probably ever that I've played video games, I did what a normal human being would do and looked up. Like, I kind of like looked towards the tree line, right?
Yeah, totally. Did what a normal human being would do. Yeah, because we don't act like humans in video games.
No, we usually are staring at the ground, and no, you're not like staring at your feet, but you're usually like staring at the ground about 6 feet in front of you.
Or you're looking at your mini map and you're not looking at the actual screen.
Yeah, totally. And it was just this moment, and I hate to sound pretentious about this because, like, I know this comes off. You
definitely can.
Like, I know how it sounds, but I feel like people who are like, I didn't think the mystery was that good, or I thought the Rapture was a little weird. I'm like, you have missed the point completely.
Oh, yeah.
This game isn't actually about Rapture; it's about the people affected by it. And that's why, like, all of these stories, like the big moments, like you find these little balls of light and you have to tilt your controller to unlock them to get these giant scenes, but none of them actually have to deal with the Rapture. They're all about the emotions that people are feeling and like the way that they're dealing with this. Like, people are finding God, or they're telling people that they had forgotten that they love them, or they're hoping to be reconnected with their lost loved ones in the great beyond, or they've decided that they're going to end it themselves and regain control of the situation.
I get really stressed out when talking about art in particular, like video games, TV, movies. There's a couple of big sticking points to me in this kind of thing, which is that people get really hung up on the end game and not the journey. And I know that sounds really pretentious, but like, why do you think everyone was pissed off at Lost? Like, Lost actually, like, I wasn't a huge fan of the show, but like, there's a stretch in like seasons 3 and season 4 that are really, really good, but a lot of them have nothing to do with the mythology of the show. And of course, the first show I got way into is The X-Files, which comes up every single time I'm on a damn podcast. I'm sorry. But the best episodes of that are standalones, and they have nothing to do with the overarching mythology, which turned out to all be mostly bullshit. But it doesn't matter. Like, that stuff, like the in-between, the of-the-moment storytelling, especially and I think this game, the of-the-moment storytelling is really way more interesting than the end game, quote-unquote.
Totally, and that same message about the journey is really, really important in this game, because when people are talking negatively about it, they're like, well, I don't want to go to this field unless I know I'm going to find something because I can't get there fast enough. And it's like, it's not about you finding something in the field. It's about you just going through the field. It's about simply...
And there's two different kinds of people, Josh.
Yeah, and...
I get so stressed out with this in real life, too. Like, well, what are we going to do? Well, we can just go out and go downtown and, look around. Well, I don't want to go down there unless there's something to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Just experience something. I don't know.
And actually, this was...
Look around.
The game really connected to my childhood, because when I was a kid, I used to, me and my stepbrother would go to, like, a construction site or a haunted house or something like that, and we just kind of walk around where people aren't.
Yeah.
And we weren't playing a game, right? We weren't playing hide and seek or tag or something like that. We were literally just going places that other people didn't go, and that was what really connected to me with Rapture. It was like, I am just... the whole gameplay is just me investigating and soaking in this world where no one else is.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just very rewarding in and of itself. Like, I didn't think that I really needed anything else. And I think that if you added more to Rapture, or to Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, if you change this game to create a mechanic of like scribbling in a notebook, or you got to find all the thermoses, like, I think it would just cheapen the experience and just turn it into something that clearly the Chinese room had no interest in making.
Yeah.
And so that's really why the game connected with me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I have kind of the same memories. My best friend and I used to always go to like creeks and abandoned areas and forest. I grew up in a lot of places that had lots of overgrowth and stuff like that. And that kind of thing was always really interesting to me, and that definitely has the same kind of backdrop,
Yeah, and I felt the same way when I played Dear Esther to a degree, where like I enjoyed Dear Esther just because I enjoyed kind of walking through this weird world that they created. I didn't feel like I needed to do anything, and once again, I feel like if I had to do something in that game, it would have just cheapened the experience and the story that they're trying to tell. And the writing's pretty subtle, so if you're doing too much else, you're going to be paying attention to the wrong thing. You're not going to be focused on like the characters and the relationships.
I tell you, when it comes to like that sort of thing, which I think a real make or break thing in this game would have been the voice acting, which is really, really good in this game.
Yeah, it's like, really good.
Really good. Like voice acting in games, we still have a long way to go, I think. Like there's a lot of games that are doing amazing stuff, but it's really, really good. Like it kind of makes a lot of other, especially indie games and smaller games and stuff that's not, Naughty Dog, kind of look not that great, which is good. Good thing. It's a big step forward.
Voice acting also has that problem where it's either Nolan North, Troy Baker, Ashley Birch, and I'm forgetting her name now, and I feel really bad about it. Femshep, and it's one of these like 5 people. Or like the drop off is just monumental, right? There's no it's not like in film where like when you have that B-level actor that you always enjoy seeing where you're like, oh man, it's totally that guy. I love that guy.
I have like exclusively B and C list actors are always my favorites.
Yeah.
I get way too attached to C listers and then watch like all their like one episode of Law and Order that they were in, or like occasionally if I really like a British actor and he's in like he was in The Pacific and that's the only time I'm gonna see him.
Yeah.
Other than Henchman #2 and whatever, but yeah.
And so kind of cultivating like more voiceover work or going to the lesser.
It's nice to hear a bunch of nobodies.
Yeah, and have them do it well. I was like, yeah. This is so refreshing, and I'm not going. Hey, there's Ashley Birch. I know what she sounds like. This
Which
game
is fine. I mean, like, I have nothing. I know we've already talked. Last of Us is old, and everyone's talked about it nonstop. And I'm not a huge Naughty Dog fan. I kind of didn't. Uncharted's fine, but I watched it. I didn't actually play it. But when it came out, I kind of had this instant knee-jerk asshole cynic reaction to it, which was, it sounds like Oscar bait, but a game. I don't care. And then it came out, and I was like, okay, well, shit. This is like, first of all, this is some of the most subtle writing I've seen in a game, where people are like not saying what they mean, and there's not exposition all the time, and like people are disingenuous with one another, like if that makes sense, it didn't immediately telegraph exactly what was going on, and then the acting was actually amazing. So I kind of, that to me, Last of Us sort of established a new high watermark for that kind of thing for me, and it's really nice to see people take that kind of subtlety. The subtlety is something I think a lot of games lack.
Oh, definitely. And
this game has it in spades in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and I mean, a way that you can define good acting and good voice acting in particular is to simply be like, what are they not saying? What can you get from this performance?
Because that's explicitly said.
Yeah, it's not in the dialogue. You just know. And games are starting to learn how to do this. And someone recently posed the question of like, what defines next gen? And people were, using graphics and stuff like that. And they're like, well, this game's super big and this game's super beautiful. And I was like, it's really starting to be a thing where like all games look beautiful, but the stuff that really speaks to me is defining like the next generation of games is when games aren't ham-fisted or heavy-handed, when I can listen to a dialogue exchange and go like, oh man, there's some interesting stuff going on here that's just being conveyed through the silence.
When I was a teenager, anime was really big. That was the first wave of anime being big, and a lot of dubs. I have a real love-hate relationship with anime. There's like 6 series that I'm very ride or die for, and then everything else is weeaboo trash. But back then, there was like a big transition between really crappy voice acting and everyone just being like, just get subtitles and don't mess with it. Yeah. And then transferring over to dubs. And like I told somebody once that to me, like the first time I heard a good dub, I wasn't actually watching a show. It was in the other room and I overheard it and I didn't realize I was listening to anime. I was like, that is how I knew that was a good dub.
Totally.
And if I can listen to a video game and it's like radio chatter and whatnot, and not immediately go, well, that's fucking radio chatter in a video game, then it has done something remarkable. Like The Last of Us or Uncharted and stuff like that, I can listen to from the other room, and it sounds like a movie.
Totally. You know? Like, yeah, I mean, my roommate, I played The Last of Us in like 2 sittings. And she was working on she does costume design, so she was working on costumes, and she was just listening to me play the game, and she would, like, every now and then I'd just hear from the background be like, oh, what was that about? Like, you know, just kind of pipe in and just like, she was invested in these characters.
Yeah, it's not playing really, the game. Yeah, because I mean, you can hear so much of what's going on in that game through the voice acting.
Totally. Rapture actually compared and contrasts really well with the other game I played, Submerge. I'll talk about it very briefly because I didn't like Submerged a ton.
That works though. It's good.
Yeah, and they compare and contrast against each other really, really well, because Submerged is about a girl who takes her injured brother and goes to this place where, once again, humanity is gone. An event has submerged the majority of our world in water, and just the tops of these buildings are there. And so you're going from building to building, trying to get to these things that you need in order to help your brother. And so right there you have the interesting contrast of, like, this game, it moves faster. You have a boat, and on that boat you have a boost for your boat, so you can go faster if you want to go faster. And then you have objectives. You know exactly where you need to go, exactly how to get there, and you need to find something. But the way that it contrasts negatively against Rapture is the fact that there's nothing to soak in that game. Whereas Rapture, I wanted to just simply, you know, be in this golden wheat field, or, you know, look through every single open door of this house and try to figure out what was happening. I wanted to hear about the people and hear about their stories. Submerged just basically doesn't acknowledge that there were people before. There's little like picture art that you get that clearly an event happened and clearly this world was destroyed, but it doesn't engage in that at all. It doesn't.
It's very surface level from what I've heard.
Exactly. Like, it's like,
I've read a lot of pieces about this. I haven't gotten to play it yet, but I've read enough about it, and I actually saw a bit on PlayStation Lifestyle, which I don't regularly read, but this was a very prescient paragraph. It's a game that on the surface seems built for you to ask questions about what it represents, but once you dig a little deeper, you realize it was never prepared to give you the answers. It's not a conversation, it's just a speech.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, right? I was like, holy crap, who wrote this? I actually went to go click on the full review to go figure out who that was, because I liked it.
Yeah, I mean, and as I was writing my review, which is currently up on indiehaven.com.
There you go, yeah. Perfect.
I found that I was struggling with how to exactly say that there's nothing here. Like,
it's a player-game relationship. Like, the speech versus conversation, like, games that really suck you in, games that really, like, leave an impression on you, are games that take advantage of the fact that this is the only medium that's truly participatory. Mm-hmm. Like, I think a lot of Shadow of the Colossus is a really good example of this, that it feels like it's not necessarily that there's more to do in the game, quote unquote, but it feels like there's an emotional feedback loop, like you're having a relationship with this game.
Totally. And you know, to jump off that, participatory doesn't necessarily mean that it is filled with features and side quests, but what it does is that it is engaging you as a participant.
Yeah. Like, and, you know, and there's passive engagement too, like not just active, but there's passive engagement, like in the Elder Scrolls games. You get exactly as much out of those as you want to put in. If you want to go around and kill dragons, that's great. But if you're like me and you want to just sit and read books and look at what's going on in caves and stuff like that, then that's a sort of, there's as much there as you want to delve into. You know what I mean? Like, the game's actually giving you all this stuff to check out if you are interested in checking it out.
And to kind of loop this all the way back around to Rapture and to really define how I feel about this game, I think it is the magnum opus for anyone who wishes that they didn't have to fight shit in Skyrim. Who are like, I just want to
walk around and eat bees.
Yeah, and just read the books and what's in this cool cave. Oh, yeah. Like, people who are like, fuck fast travel, I never skip anything, I just want to, like, engage in this world and walk around in it. Like, yeah. And people, you know, use walking simulator derogatorily, but I embrace it. I'm like, yeah, I want a game where
if somebody drops that phrase, I have no interest in reading the rest of their... It's like when somebody starts off a conversation with, as a taxpayer, you know, like shit's about to pop off, and you're like, no, I'm done. That's cool. You got nothing to contribute to this.
Yeah.
walking simulator. Dude, come on.
The other thing I wanted to talk about that I just think I find this fascinating every single year is the International, which took place last weekend, and a USA team, Evil Geniuses. It's actually, I'm asterisk that. It's not a USA team. It is 4 USA players and a Canadian player. I always feel so bad for that Canadian player. It's like US has co-opted this team. It was a fascinating piece of sports entertainment to watch. As the presentation for those tournaments have grown year after year, I have never played a game of Dota. I'll start off by saying that. But I started watching the International 2 years ago because I was like, I gotta see what this is about. This is just so outside my realm of comprehension.
Someone explain Dota to me.
Yeah.
I went into it thinking, like, please, I need to understand this.
Totally. And of course, like, I watched like 5 matches and I was like, I'm so out of my depth. I feel like it's not like someone who has never watched football watching football. I feel like it is someone from another planet landing and trying to engage in football. I
feel the same way about football, to be honest, as I do about Dota. Like, I understand a lot of sports, and I love baseball, and I understand hockey, I understand soccer. And I was in, just full disclosure, I was in marching band when I was in high school. And in college, and I have probably been to 10,000 football games, and I cannot tell you how the fuck to play football. I can't tell you. I don't know what it is.
That's awesome.
I don't understand it. Like, and I've had people. There's been times where I've been sitting in the bleachers, and I would look over at somebody and go, "Dude, what are they doing?" And they would explain it to me, and I would retain nothing. And I'm not stupid. I stand by the fact that I am not a stupid person, and yet football and Dota elude me.
Well, continuing the analogy, I actually think it works because in football, you at least have that, that primary instinct of like, okay, the offense needs to get the football past that line. Yeah. That is if it all boils down to nothing else, I know that much about football. Yeah. And the same is true.
What a touchdown is, my God.
Yeah, and the same is true in Dota, where you're like, if nothing else, just watch the little health bars. Who has more health bars? And that signifies the drama of Dota as you watch
video games.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you watch the green and the red kind of clash together, and then you just watch and see whose health bar is dropping faster. And that does signify the drama, because you'll see someone get down to a sliver of life, and you're like, oh my God, they're gonna die, they're gonna die, they're gonna die. And then crazy shit happens, and everyone else dies. And even though you can't comprehend the nuance of like,
it's inherently exciting.
Yeah, you simply know from playing video games for a long time that you're like, that guy should be dead, those guys should be alive, but it didn't happen that way. And it's beautiful because that right there signifies what is sports. Like, that's the drama of sports, is when you go, based on all of the things I understand as a human being, you should have lost and you should have won, but it didn't work that way because of sports. Like, because that's the great thing.
And a lot of video games lack that, because there's pretty clear-cut advantages and lots of stuff. Like, most of my background is from RPGs, and any PvP and Warcraft is like, back in the day when Warcraft first started, I played a lot of it, and I loved the PvP aspect of it. But like, I understood that if somebody was outside of 3 or 4 levels above me, and if they were equipped correctly, I was screwed pretty much no matter what from a statistical standpoint. But eliminating the gear aspect of it makes things a lot more interesting from a sporting standpoint, I guess.
Yeah, well, and it was actually very poignant to have Gamescom was happening at the same time, and they were talking about the Halo championships were happening.
Yeah.
And so I watched a sliver of that during the Microsoft press conference because they did it, and I was like, this is horrible sports entertainment, because you are seeing everything from this very myopic perspective. And you kind of know that whoever you're following is going to win. Like, this person's going to survive and that person's going to die. And there's none of that drama. You don't feel like you are in this third-person omnipresent perspective, which you often do with sports, of like, I'm getting it all. I'm seeing the bird's eye view, and I can watch myself either be super elated by what happens or be crushed by what happens.
That's totally true about Dota, though. Like, the fact that you can actually see so much of it, and that it's not, it's not a limited perspective. That's hugely helpful just as a spectator.
And people have talked about the commentary about how they use a lot of lingo, and it's totally true. Like, I think that it's better every year, but it's still pretty impenetrable, as I talked about, my first couple years watching it and having no comprehension of what was happening. But at the same time, they do this. They're playing cameraman while they're talking. Like they're controlling. Like they're zipping over here, and they're intuiting where the action's going to happen before it even happens. And it's something you can totally take for granted as you sit there on your couch and you're like, oh, they take me at all the best spots. I could do this job. But when you get down to it, the fact that they are so good at like framing action, which is something they should have no business doing. That should be a cameraman's job. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And it was great drama. Like I followed the tournament, and I was rooting for Evil Geniuses. You notice how I didn't say Team USA. But I was rooting for them because I had watched the documentary, and Clinton Loomis, who is one of the characters from the documentary, or one of the people they follow around, is in this Evil Geniuses team. He's 28. This is probably like his last season. Once again, great sports drama, right? Like that is sports right there. It's like this old veteran on his last leg. Oh, and alongside him is this 16-year-old, wonderkind from Pakistan.
Man, I just turned 29, and like it's killing me that my favorite players are like younger than me.
Children? Yeah.
Like, oh God, I'm 29. My arm would be given out if I was a pitcher. Jesus Christ.
Thank God that I don't like college athletics, or I would just constantly be like, oh my God, that kid's 18.
It's emotionally just too hard for me at this point in my life.
It was kind of crazy though, watching like this 16-year-old Pakistani kid. And I'm like, he is half my age, and he just made $1 million playing Dota. This was a $6 million pot.
Oh my God, that's another thing to talk about. Like the sheer amount of money that's involved in this. I know a lot of people have talked about this at this point, but like a lot of people are all kind of cynical about it. Like, oh, this is money's involved and blah, 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 esports, blah, blah, blah. Okay, dude, like, what a time to be alive. Like, you can make this much money playing friggin' Dota. Like, isn't this the dream you had when you were a teenager? Come on.
Well, it's also like, and if you were to ask me why, like one sport one esport that I thought was going to get big, I would say Dota because of that. Because at the end of the day, when you're talking to the average Joe on the street and you go, hey, someone made $250,000 playing Halo, they'd go, okay. But if you go to them and you say, hey, so-and-so one is going to play for $6 million playing this video game, do you want to spend like an hour of your life watching that?
Yes.
They'll simply be like, $6 million is a lot of money. I would like to engage in that. Like, it's great theater, and they do a lot of things very, very intelligently. The trophy is this like, it's called the Aegis of Champions, but it's a shield, and it's placed in this like stone pillar that sits in the center of the stage.
It's so metal. Tournament. It's awesome.
Oh, it's brilliant. Like there's a lot of things that they've really done right.
Presentation wise, like I've gone on about this before. I actually went on about this on the Indie Haven podcast. Like presentation wise, a friend of mine went and took video of it and took pictures and all this stuff, and like. It looks like you're really it's so cool. It's so next level. Like the experiencing video games in that kind of atmosphere is I don't think that I've ever like seen anything like that in person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and the crowd that is there obviously is they react like a sports.
Yeah,
crowd, right?
exactly.
And, the cheers, and that's another thing where like if you can't follow the action, you can at least listen to the cheers and like the screaming broadcasters, and you get that.
It's really cool. And even not liking Dota, it's very, very cool to see this, because when I was a teenager, I used to play. I played a lot of first-person shooters, and I used to go to LAN parties all the time. That was basically my social calendar, was LAN parties and QuakeCon and stuff like that. And I used to take my computer and go play Unreal Tournament or Quake 2 or whatever. And LAN parties were really fun, but they were very quiet. Like. Yeah. Was not a lot. I mean, every once in a while you'd have somebody talk shit or something, and that was it. Like you'd every couple of minutes somebody go, "Oh, fire in the hole." That was it. Like that's that was the cataclysmic device for Quake 2, obviously. But it's not the same kind of. This is a completely different kind of atmosphere to me. And I know there's some people that are kind of like me, that have been around playing video games a long time and have gotten a little cynical in some ways, where they're like, this is just jocks coming into our headspace. Like, no, it's the same kind of people that have always loved video games, but they're doing it in a completely new kind of way that's really exciting to me, actually.
Totally.
I'm kind of surprised at my own emotional reaction to it. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And like part of me should be like, oh, this is bullshit. It's just sports. But I don't know. There are sports that I do actually respond to, so I understand this. This engages that part of my brain the same way that that sports do, and it's really cool.
Well, and as of right now, luckily, Dota is the way that it separates itself from most sports is it's relatively controversy free at the moment, right?
Oh yeah.
You know, when you compare it to the stuff that the NFL has had to go through, or
I mean, other than that, everyone is on Adderall.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like,
have you taken Adderall? It's kind of amazing.
I have never taken Adderall, but
I highly recommend it to all of our listeners.
To anyone who makes Adderall, if you want to pay us as a sponsor, we are happy to do so.
Oh, you can pay me an Adderall even. That'd be amazing. Man, I had no idea that you could pay attention to stuff before that. It's the best.
I do pretty good at like focusing in on things. Like, and this is actually not like I binge video games. Like, I'll just sit there and do like 6 or 7 hours. Video
games are the only thing I can do that with. Like, I can literally sit and play Skyrim for 10 hours in a row, but like I cannot sit still and think about anything else for that long. And I know that that's some kind of commentary on us as a generation, but I have a hard time focusing. Like, my brain is just very, very scattered. I actually have ADHD, so it's like video games for some reason work for me in my brainscape and like very little else, you know? So.
No, totally. Like, I'm totally the opposite. I think if I took Adderall, like, people would come and they'd be like, what have you done? I'm like, I wrote a novel. I wrote the whole thing in one sitting. It's 300 pages long. You can read it now.
I'm like, I can think long enough to make a grocery list.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Like, that would be my fear of taking Adderall, is that people would be like, do you have to go to the bathroom? I'd be like, I do.
No.
Or just, no, yeah, don't worry about it.
I got 10 more hours of Skyrim. Hang on.
I spent the last 4 hours just thinking about the meaning of life. So I'll come back around to this bathroom problem in the next like 5 to 6 hours.
So in the same vein, I guess we have to address Rocket League at some point.
Totally,
because it has popped off.
Actually, and it does fit into this kind of esports thing very well. I could totally imagine if they got a really good spectator mode.
Yeah.
I could imagine watching Rocket League, because that game is fascinating to watch.
Yeah, I haven't played a single 10 seconds of it, and I've seen enough of it, and I've listened to enough people talk about it. And we talked about this on the podcast on the Indie Haven podcast, and I'm friggin' like, I'm so excited about this Dota situation, the presentation level that's going on with it. I'm like, dude, can you imagine watching Rocket League in a Buffalo Wild Wings kind of situation? Like, wouldn't that be awesome?
Hopefully we can get to a point where like we have the Olympic, like the E-Olympics, where like all of these in just like a 2 week.
We have like
binge.
10 games and it's like 2 weeks of nothing but that.
Exactly. Like, yeah, you have like 10 different games, and all the tournaments are happening simultaneously. I don't think I'd leave my couch. Like, if they had the right games. Yeah, I kind of would be
really dialed into that.
Oh, totally. For those who don't know, Rocket League is this amazing video game where you engage on 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, or 4-on-4 versions of European football, or soccer as we call it here in the States. But you are all in a car, and you can use like special hydraulics to kind of jump into the air as this car. You can also use a special rocket boost to speed through the field. And I played a little bit of it. I played a couple of seasons on single player, which is passable. And then I played the multiplayer. And this is why I think I would enjoy watching Rocket League way more than playing it. I just got destroyed. Like, just embarrassed. Like, I literally haven't felt like this since I was like playing coach's pitch. And like, where you'd strike out and you just walk back to the bench and you just be like,
yep, totally screw that up.
Yeah, and
my parents don't love me anymore.
Yeah, no, you're just like, my teammates know I'm bad, and I know I'm bad. Like, everyone knows I'm bad. Yeah, like, or you like, you get to that point.
I feel that way with every multiplayer game I play now. Like, unless it's Card Hunter or Borderlands, those are my two. Like, that's the only stuff I'm good at. If they ever make a multiplayer mode for Darkest Dungeon, I am confident in the fact that I will kick ass at that. But other than that, I cannot play multiplayer games anymore.
I think it's all like, it's best quantified in that moment when two kids run for a ball in the outfield and one picks it up but hands it to the other because they know they can throw it better. It's just like, I have got the ball, but that is the most I can contribute to this team as a player. Take it from here.
Yeah.
But so getting back to the conversation of why Rocket League is awesome, it basically is just boiled down to the most intense minutes of soccer, where you are just, it's the corner kicks, the crosses. It's all just about getting the ball into the air and then trying to, boost your car up into the air to head it into the goal. It takes a ton of timing and precision. And I think that's the other thing too. As someone who's even just dabbled in this game, my appreciation for people who can master it isn't insane. I'm just like, holy crap. Like, these guys, I can't do this on like a base level. I can, go up and down the field, but timing these jumps is just insane. Yeah, it is just amazing. Have you, you just watched it online?
Yeah, I've watched a few games, and then I've got a lot of friends that have been playing it, so I've just been kind of spectating. But it's not my kind of game, but I certainly appreciate watching it.
It's the same thing you were talking about with the International, where it's funny to watch the video game community kind of rise up in rebellion with this and be like, hey, you got me to play a sports game. How dare
I got tricked.
Yeah, it totally has that feeling. But it also, it does something that this wonderful little Korean MMO basketball game does, where it puts you in the body of one player and having to interact with teammates. And doing that is fantastic. Where I
love that you can call to a Korean MMO basketball game.
Yeah, it was a deep dive.
Again, what a time to be alive.
Yeah. But you have to work together as a team because you are only playing as one person. It's not like FIFA or Madden or MLB The Show where you
did that on one of the Steam roundups, didn't you?
Yeah, it was.
Really cool.
It was like my own little sports write-up, and I actually would have put Rocket League in there, but Rocket League was actually releasing that week and was part of Simply Steam that week, so I wrote about it there instead. Yeah. But yeah, man, that game is so cool, and the cult of personality that's developed around it is fantastic. I really hope someone smart has got to be seeing this and seeing the dollar signs that can be made out of this game.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not a huge jump. We'll do one last topic here before calling it. I don't have my time ticker, so I don't know how long we've been going, but I feel like it's been a decent amount of time. The last thing I'll do is give an update to me playing Metal Gear Solid. I have been desperately trying to blitz through so I can play the Phantom Pain when it comes out. And me and Aaron were having a spirited conversation about Metal Gear Solid prior to this. I believe the last time we talked about this, I was finishing 2 and was on to 3. 2 was really painful for me. There were literally, I was so bored I had tears in my eyes sometimes. But, and as a point of contention, I was like, I won't skip cutscenes. I must hear every word that is said. I'll just, grit my teeth and bear through it. And I think that 2 might not be a bad game. It's just probably aged the most poorly.
It has aged poorly. I completely agree. I think that's the problem with playing 2 right now is just that, it's just so. It was very of its time, I guess. Yeah. It was such a huge deal when it came out, and now it has just. I wouldn't say it's unplayable or anything. I watched. My husband's a huge Metal Gear fan, whereas I am really not. I played the first game and liked it just fine, but then never got around to 2. And then not long after we met, 2 came out, or not long before we met, 2 came out, and it was really cool at the time, but it has definitely aged poorly.
Totally. I have said this.
I can't put my finger on why.
Well, I think that it's trying to be so cinematic, and to compare this to the first game also tries to be cinematic, but because that first game was such a breakthrough, you can kind of appreciate it more.
It stays. It's still you were oh, games weren't like this before.
Yeah, totally. And you can and it feels like a product of that mid-90s PlayStation, right?
And if you have even the vaguest idea of what the timeline of video games, you understand just playing it now, even if you haven't played anything else, that it stood by itself for quite a while. It was a huge step forward.
But I actually really liked Metal Gear Solid 3. I was super nervous going into it.
I love 3, yeah.
If I don't like 3, this might just be a disaster.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed it. And I think you summed it up before the podcast, Aaron, where it has that beautiful Cold War mentality. And each of these games, what I'm finding is wonderful about them is Kojima doesn't want to make another Metal Gear game. So he instead kind of subvertly makes these Metal Gear games be about this other game he wanted to make.
Yeah.
And clearly he wanted to make a James Bond-esque Cold War spy game.
It's really fun. I thought it was really great. 3's my favorite out of all of them.
And
by a long shot.
It has that total James Bond intro where it's the Snake Eater song plays as it's doing the cutscene, and there's these colors popping out from everywhere. It's really, really cool.
It's just cheesy enough to like, and just a little self-aware. It never takes itself like incredibly seriously. It takes itself as seriously as Bond movies do, which is just enough to the point where it's almost ridiculous because there's so much stuff that's over the top in those games. Whereas I think 4, like, it took itself way too seriously. I can't stand 4, but that's just a whole other thing.
Ooh, we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
So the other real cool thing about 3 is actually a gameplay thing that I think is still incredible, and it's that camouflage mechanic, which I thought was
so cool. Fun. Yeah.
And I was like, it was just this moment where I was like, holy crap, no game's ever done this. Like,
what a weird little mechanic that is.
Yeah, and like it's just a nice little spice thing to this game, which is a spy espionage game. Of course you should be worried about your camouflage. Like, yeah. It's so fun. And it actually, like, as someone who doesn't usually like stealth games, it really made me appreciate the stealth. And I was like, I really like stealth games for the most part. And I think 3 has the strongest stealth mechanic out of all those games. Yeah, I agree. I think that it's definitely the most interesting stealth to engage in.
It's the most refined, and there's the camouflage aspect to it. I think that it's the best stealth game out of all of them. So purely just on that.
I'm through Act 2 of 4, so I'm on part 4, and I'm finished the second act of 5 acts. So I'm 2/5 through the game. That game is obviously the easiest to play because it's the most recent. It was on PS3 hardware. And as Daniel pointed out the last time we talked about it, it plays like a third-person shooter. You are just going around shooting stuff. I think it's also the easiest for me to engage in just normally because you can literally treat it like a third-person shooter and blast your way through most scenarios. It encourages stealth, but it's definitely more forgiving in its stealth than any of the other Metal Gear games.
Which is phase 1 of how that game lost me.
Yeah. And the story is also more bombastic. I like the globetrotting aspect of it in the sense that I think it gives him more time to tell the relationship stories that Kojima wants to tell. Like, it's clear that he just hit a point where he's like, I can't do another, through line of a dude infiltrating a base and coming out the other side a changed man. I've told that story 3 times, and trying to build these relationships in between all of this is ridiculous. So, he kind of every game comes back onto this plane where they reconvene and he can kind of further his relationships as the game goes on. That game also, though, has some of the longest cutscenes that, like, this is the closest I think that when people talk to, like, watching a game, Metal Gear Solid 4 probably comes the closest to that because there are just long moments where I'm like...
And they drag.
Yeah, like, I'm hardly engaged. Like, that scene, we had ordered Chinese food, and, like, from the time that we ordered it, the cutscene started. It's the cutscene where you meet the doctor. Oh, fuck, what's her name? Naomi? Yeah, it's where you meet Naomi or where you find her. We had ordered Chinese food.
Please tell me you weren't eating Chinese food.
No. It arrived, and I was like, I don't want to eat it until this cutscene's done. I don't want to eat it now until this cutscene's done. And I just had to sit there.
The whole time you're sitting there staring at the Chinese food. Yeah, like, are you shitting me?
I'm like, just fucking get to the point so I can eat my food. and it's like, she's doing these experiments on him, and meanwhile, there's supposedly a war going on. They're in enemy lines. I think they had enough time to sit and chat for, and like every time I hit these points in Metal Gear Solid, I just turn to whoever's sitting next to me. I'm like, Metal Gear Solid, the saga of the yappiest covert spies who ever existed.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely, man. I think that's the point in the series. To me, like me and my husband played through 4 together. He played it. I watched, and there was actually about a half an hour into it. The disappointment was setting in. Like, I am just so friggin' mad at this game right now. Like, you could look at his face while he was playing it that he thought this was bullshit. And I actually took a picture of his face, and it's still on my phone from when Metal Gear 4 came out, because every once in a while I'll go look at it and laugh about it. Like, this is the moment that Nathan was so let down by something.
It's that moment when you were in the theaters. And for me, it was episode 2 when I was in the theaters, and I just had this moment where I'm like, I'm bored. This isn't very good, is it?
No, it sucks. This sucks. I like this thing, and the thing is, I don't like the thing anymore. That's pretty much exactly his face. Like when I was a kid, when Phantom Menace came out, I was psyched. I was a huge Star Wars fan when I was a kid, and I was so fucking let's go. So me and my dad went, and we waited in line, and then like 20 minutes into the movie, I had this realization when I was like, I'm 8 or 9, I guess, when this movie came out. And that was the moment I think about where I go, wow, that's when I got cynical. That's when all of a sudden I was like, I got taken advantage of. Like, my love for Star Wars has been perverted somehow. And this is the first real hard disappointment I have felt in my life.
Yeah. I mean, that flew over my head as I was a kid. I was a less self-aware kid than you were. I was like, okay.
I was a pretentious little asshole when I was a kid.
Well, it was 2 where I had this feeling.
Yeah.
Like, oh no.
I think it's funny that it was the same series, and you said episode 2, and I was like, oh yeah, I know. It hurt all of us, man.
And so coming back here to Metal Gear Solid 4, I think I'm gonna obviously I'm gonna soldier through because it's so damn easy that it's not like it's not that I'm playing a bad game.
In it.
Yeah, it's
not necessarily a bad game. The thing that was weird to me when we were playing it when it came out was the universal acclaim it got, and I felt like we were taking crazy pills.
Oh, totally. It got 10 out of 10s from a lot of
everybody, and we're friends with lots of hardcore Metal Gear people, and they all loved it. And we're like, I don't know what's going on. I think we might be playing another game. I think we got shipped the wrong game.
Well, part of that is the fact that it looks super impressive on the PlayStation 3, right? I mean, the PlayStation 3 had some good-looking games, but as a product, I know it was 2008, so a lot of the series that we think of as being pretty-looking games, like Uncharted or games of that nature, hadn't really come around yet, or at least hadn't evolved yet, and so you're watching that. It was
incredible looking.
Yeah, you're like, Jesus, this is. Especially and even going back and playing on the PlayStation 3, I'm like, this is as good as some PlayStation 4 games,
Yeah.
The reason why I think I can really power through it is because it's that feeling that I have where I'm like, this is a totally mediocre shooter. I have engaged with these so much that I know how to just kind of turn my brain off and just blow through them.
Yeah.
And that's a really sad realization to come through that and I think everyone who plays a ton of games knows that feeling where you just go I am not connected to this. But
I've played so many games like this that I don't have any problem just finishing this,
Yeah, I know how to mindlessly just kind of go through the cycles, finish this up and then check it off my, list.
Yeah, it's always a bad feeling.
And you know what? It's actually a response, I feel like, and I don't know if he knew this. I don't want to give Kojima too much credit here. But it's a blockbuster game kind of surrounded by blockbuster games, right? At a time when games were very much becoming about explosions and everyone had kind of latched onto his cinematic vision. It kind of feels like he is just falling in line with where games were going. You can see Call of Duty in that opening mission, right? And it's a Middle Eastern setting with a lot of people shooting and blowing up. And I think even one of the best ways to sum it up is the fact that there are monster closets of soldiers coming out of just these areas, and they're infinite. It's not like there's a finite amount of guards you have to circumvent to get around. It's literally just pouring people out so you can kill as many as you want, or just run through the area.
Completely defeats the purpose of Metal Gear to me, but that's a whole other thing.
It is, and that story is just ridiculously weird. Watching Raiden cut the legs off of these giant robots is who are basically dumb AT-ATs, or I'm sorry, AT-STs from Star Wars, little chicken walkers.
Yeah.
It is just every time I watch it, I'm just like, what am I seeing? What is this? What is this future? So yeah, it's a super weird game, which kind of also just intrigues me. Around man, I'm gonna scratch. I want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, Kojima. Where are you gonna take me?
Yeah.
Then after this, I'm hoping to finish up Peace Walker, do Ground Zeroes, and then I will have binged the Metal Gear series in about a month. So
that's an accomplishment, man.
Doing the Lord's work over here.
Yeah, and you're experiencing a lot of video game stuff. There's a lot of stuff crammed into those games. There was a lot of things that had never been done before. There were a lot of mechanics that other games ended up aping. I mean, however I feel about the series as a whole now, it just definitely has its place in history. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on in that series that didn't exist prior to it, you know?
Binging these games all at one time actually makes some of these narrative leaps a lot more easier to take. You almost like you get like a Stockholm syndrome.
You kind of get lulled into it, yeah.
Yeah, where you're like, oh, this is what good storytelling is. And then like you like take a break and, you know, do something else and you're like, wait a minute, Kojima. You're just nonsense. This is crazy talk. And especially like when you're like his lingo, his crazy words that he comes up with. Like, it's kind of like watching Dota, where, you know, eventually you're just like, oh, okay, yeah, the system.
Once you get used to the vocabulary and it starts becoming, like, normal in your brain, and then that's when you're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly. Or when you go, like, maybe this isn't too far off from our future. Maybe this is what it could look like.
No,
that's crazy. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Otacon got really disturbingly hot in 4. I think that's the only real other thought I had.
Well, and that's because he is, you know, he's the love interest with Naomi, right? I feel like that's where. Don't spoil it, but I feel like that's the hint.
Yeah, which is weird to me, but
like all Kojima women, or all the women that Kojima creates, she just won't button up her shirt for some reason.
Dude, there's plenty of cool ladies in that series, but to be honest, the thing that actually made me the most uncomfortable in any of his games was the Beauty and the Beast brigade that's in 4. Like, that really, I could talk for hours about the implications of that whole situation, but I remember the first cutscene we got when we killed the first Beauty and the Beast lady, and I was so uncomfortable I left the room. I've been playing games a long time, and I'm used to a certain level of, like, you know, that sort of thing. But man, like it bothered me, and I don't get bothered by stuff that easily.
This is Laughing Octopus. Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah.
The one. Okay. Yeah. He has some weird stuff that he gets into, and I kind of do and kind of don't want to know what his history, like what his love life is like, because I feel like it's a dark place to go down. But I feel like some of that has to be spoken about in these games. Like somehow he is communicating something that is happening.
It's weird because I've never been struck by any other any other female character in these games. Like the other 3 have always been like, I'm totally cool with basically all of the female characters that are in this. I'm not insulted by anybody. Sniper Wolf's fucking awesome in the first game.
Sniper Wolf's cool, yeah.
Yeah, cool as hell. And then Fortune's really cool in 2. They kind of always, to me, got treated the same way that all the male characters did. They all got their, you know, weird little backstory, and none of them struck me weird until that. And then I was like, this is really weirdly exploitative, and I don't like it at all.
Yeah, in 3, the love interest for Snake also doesn't zip up her shirt.
See, I didn't mind her that much.
There's also a weird thing where the first time that you meet her, you can press R1 and you just stare at her boobs.
Okay, you know what? I would also stare at her boobs in that situation.
Well, yeah, because she won't.
Stuff like that I don't find that much fault with. Like, it's not that doesn't bother me. It was the particular mix of I guess you're supposed to be sympathetic towards the Beauty and the Beast people because they've been taken advantage of. They all have PTSD. Like, they all have really tragic backstories. And then there's this weird, exploitative, like, wet-ass cutscene you get with her just writhing around and dying. And I'm like, that's next level. To me, that's not like looking at boobs. You know what? Everybody has looked at boobs. It's totally cool. I'm not going to get sandy about anybody looking at boobs. But, like, that particular thing, like, the melding of those two, like, something weirdly sexual and then something really depressing, like their backstories, that so struck me just the wrong way.
Have you played Ground Zeroes?
I have not.
Okay.
And I have heard some shit.
Yeah. There's apparently some very disturbing stuff.
I read a few think pieces on that one.
Yeah, I actually watched the cutscene, so it's not going to shock me. But I am interested to play it to see if they can somewhat frame it. If the Stockholm Syndrome can go deeper to where I go,
if they can surround this with context, so it'll make it not weird.
Better be a lot of context. Yeah, I think that. Oh, so to kind of put a nice little period on this Metal Gear conversation, are you going to play 5, or do you have any interest in 5?
I 4 hurt me so bad. I have not played anything since 4.
Okay, that's fair enough. Where can people find you on the internet, Aaron?
You can find me on Indie Haven. That is where I do most of my writing. I've taken kind of a 2-week hiatus here because I was moving, but I should be back to work. I'm actually going to start doing features editing there, which is hopefully going to get you more cool features from our incredibly talented writing staff about, longer stuff, little bit meatier things, some stuff that's other than reviews and previews. So you can read some of my stuff there, and then I'll also be editing some things there. I co-host the Dead Pixels podcast with Daniel, who's kind of our sister show. We did our first episode together a couple weeks ago, and it is awesome. I'm personally prejudiced, but it was a very good episode. I enjoyed it a lot, and I look forward to doing more of that. And then I occasionally do stuff like this. So that's about it. I'm also on Twitter at KAOPHYRE. There's a long story behind that, but that's me if you want to follow me on there. That's been it for me.
And you can find this show on Twitter at Podcast Hitbox. You can also find us on iTunes, rate and review us there. We really, really appreciate it. You can find me on Twitter at Joshua9. You can also find me at New Game Network, where I just did a review of Rare Replay, and you can also find my review of Everybody's Gone to the Rapture. There's a lot of reviews coming out this month. You can also find me at Indie Haven, where I am writing Simply Steam. You'll see that this week. I'm doing news bits, and I will be doing news and features there as well. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we will see you next time on the Hitbox Podcast.